welcome to the third installment of my video series. This is a 30 plus examples of female privilege. Yes, not the male privilege, the female kind. Reworking the myth of male privilege, part 3. I'm going to be reading off of my last blog post on the same subject. Now, we all know the stereotype about how women are bad drivers, right? You might even have had personal experience to reinforce a stereotype. I have. Is it true? Are women bad drivers? Well, women think that men think that women are bad drivers, because according to Sam Killerman, the author of the blog that I am referencing through these many examples of what he calls male privilege, that is the case. And this is the third female privilege I'm going to rework, and it says, this is what it says: you can be a careless driver and not have people blame it on your sex. Okay? That is what it is. Now, if this is a if this is a male privilege, sorry, not the female, this is the male privilege, then he obviously believes that because men never get criticized for their driving ability, because they're men, they're privileged. Which to me is a little bit ridiculous. Doesn't really seem like much of a privilege. Seems like more of a nuance, something that just flies around in the air like a buzzing fly. But anyway, what that would mean is that this privilege we have is that we can drive carelessly and recklessly all over town, and people will blame it on our driving skills. Yes, that's right. Us men, we have the privilege of driving poorly, and people will look at us and go, that man is a very poor driver. Oh, but if it's a woman driving carelessly all over town, they'll say, that woman is a poor driver because she's a woman. Wow, you really got to dig, you got to stretch, talk about stretching it far to try and scrape any ounce of dignity left for what women have in their little feminist movement. But anyway, there's something seriously wrong about this stereotype. I believe it exists, but there's something wrong about it that I can't wrap my head around, and it's this fact. Why, if women are such poor drivers, do they pay less for insurance? And this is what this comes down to. Is there gender discrimination in automobile insurance? Well, let's do it like this. Insurance companies bank on paying out the least amount possible in insurance claims each year. So I would bet that they know who's really the best and worst drivers, because their entire business depends on who's driving well and who isn't. But it's funny because men pay more for insurance, a lot more. According to a Forbes article, and this was sourcing a CBS News report, men pay on average $15,000 more for auto insurance in their lifetime compared to women. Now, I don't know, $15,000 over a lifetime? $15,000 is a good chunk of money over a lifetime as it adds up. Fact is, men pay more. If women are poor drivers and they are suffering from this serious disadvantage that everyone's running around saying, women are poor drivers, they're horrible drivers because they're women, women can't drive. If they're suffering from that, why are they paying less for insurance? That is the question I had in my head. All right? Now, these rates are traditionally thought to correspond with the fact that men get into more accidents than women do, but there's more to it. According to that same Forbes article I just quoted, there are many factors which go into how much you have to pay for insurance. Here are some of the things mentioned. Speeding. drunk driving, being loyal to a single insurance company, and even the model and age of the car you drive. Now, if we look at these factors, I think men tend to fail in most of these categories. And it is backed up by statistics. Men do speed more. They do tend to drink and drive more, or at least get caught more. And they tend to drive cars that are a little bit more dangerous than the average family car. So insurance companies maybe aren't as sexist as we think they are when they come up with these numbers, because they're taking into all these factors. However, when it comes to some kind of gender discrimination or gender privilege, we have to understand this. If it states that men tend to speed more and drink and drive more and purchase more powerful vehicles, then maybe there is some truth to what I think is another stereotype, and is that, well, men are aggressive, right? Men are aggressive drivers. I think it's fair to say that that stereotype exists as well. If you disagree, make a point of it. But maybe the statistics show that there's a little bit of truth to that stereotype. Maybe they take bigger risks when they're driving. Maybe they have a little heavier foot on the gas. They're a little more confident. So because of this, we need to pay more insurance. But the funny thing is that not all men are more aggressive and overconfident when they drive. Maybe most, but not all. But insurance companies don't work that way, you see, because they consider most men to be aggressive and more confident and more willing to take risks behind the wheel. That means all men must pay more. And we do. We do. We pay $15,000 a year more. No, sorry, in a lifetime more compared to a woman. Maybe a little sexist. Could be. But as I was going over this topic, I was looking into, I needed obviously to look into statistics, and I came up with two major researches that were done quite recently. One was from Australia, one was from America, and the first one I did was from 2013. This is the first one I found. And the links to all these statistics will be in the low bar, which exist in the link to the blog post of this topic. All right. Now it says, according to Private Fleet, after carefully analyzing 2,403 responses from men and 988 responses from women, it appears that women are actually around 40% more likely to be involved in an accident per kilometer driven. Yes, you heard that right. The more women drive, or let's say the farther women drive, the more likely they're to get into accidents. So what does that say? Well, number one, generally women don't drive as far and as often as men do. And it seems logical that the less you drive, the fewer accidents you get into. But according to these Australian statistics, as women begin to drive more, they actually get into more accidents than men. Maybe there's some truth to the stereotype that women are poor drivers also, based on statistics. It could be. Now, the second study that I came across was done by researchers at the University of Michigan, who analyzed 6.5 million car crashes in the U.S. between 1998 and 2007. If you Google that, there are, I swear to God, there are hundreds of articles, and they source that same research. And one article said, an inordinate number of accidents happen when both drivers are women. Researchers found that accidents in which both drivers are female made up to 20.5% of all crashes, a number much higher than expected. They didn't expect the number to to be that high. I suppose we have a better expectation of women as drivers these days. So there you have it. Two different researches. And these researches have been sourced a lot. Check it out. One from Australia that's saying the farther women drive, the more they actually get into accidents than men. And one saying that 20.5% of all crashes are women on women. Okay? Because they did studies of men on men and women on men. And it turns out that women on women is quite high. So after all of this, what we can say is that women probably aren't bad drivers because they're women, but the stats do say that they do get into a hell of a lot more accidents than is justified for men to pay that much more for insurance. That we know. However, let's keep going. There's one thing I found about the American statistics. It was a big, long statistic, a lot of numbers, a lot of stuff in it. And what some of the articles said was that, well, they tried to justify these statistics about women being in more accidents than expected. And one of the things they said was women were in far more accidents than expected because they were shorter or because they drive less often and they lack the confidence. Yes, sirs and madams, the people collecting this data suggested that because women are shorter, they don't drive as much, and they lack the confidence, this is why these numbers are so high, so surprisingly high. Maybe people just haven't been doing these studies before. And it's true, women are shorter, and they do drive less often. And I honestly believe they do lack the confidence compared to men. So guess what? Maybe women are worse drivers because they're women. Oh, my dear God, the humanity of that horrible disadvantage compared to its male privilege. However, I did dig a little further, and I want to read out a little bit of what I came across. There was a nice graphic in one on one side I found, which was done by an insurance company, and it really leaned to the female side, which did not surprise me because it was done by an insurance company. And yes, they do have to justify the premiums that they charge males. So you don't want to come out as an insurance company and start throwing out statistics showing how horrible women drivers are when you're actually charging men that much more. Anyway, it said this. It did statistics of 6.5 million accidents. And what it found, here are some things it found. Between the ages of 16 and 19, men were in 4,257 crashes for 46.4 billion miles driven, whereas women were in 1,852 crashes for 35.2 billion miles driven. Now, it did say billion. It did. It said billions. But I noticed some errors in the infographic, and I don't know if I sincerely trust those numbers. It almost sounds like a few zeros were added. There may have been data manipulation going on in this graphic, but the reason I chose it is because it was the most visual, and I included it in my blog. Now, that's not surprising. You know, young men and women, 16 and 19, they were the biggest culprits of crashes. However, men were twice as much more likely than women at that age. But the funny thing is as you got older, and I looked down at the data, as soon as it became between the ages of 30 and 59, women and men really became a lot closer according to their data. And it was about a 30% difference, whereas before it was 50%. Quite a dramatic difference. But remember, the premiums of insurance over a lifetime, as a man, it doesn't matter how much better of a driver you become, you're still paying more than the woman. But I think the best, the other thing was when you hit 60 to 69, both men and women were almost the same, and just about as horrible as a 16-year-old. Men and women, by the time they hit 60, they're both horrible drivers. And that's life. You get old. However, if we put all that data together between all the ages and we average it all out, I came up with a ratio, a single-digit ratio of number of accidents per miles driven for men as being 1 to 4 and women being 1 to 6. That's not a big difference in the whole grand scheme of things. Is that enough to justify $15,000 more in a lifetime? I don't know. You're going to have to ask an insurance person. But very interesting data. But regardless of all that, some of the statistics, to sum it up, there was a lot of contradiction over the years. And I noticed that the data was definitely biased depending on who was putting it out there. Insurance companies definitely tended to favor more of women being better drivers. And if you look close enough, I can almost guarantee you'll find a little bit of fudging on the numbers. But regardless, there was one thing about all that data that caught my attention, and it was this, that indeed women are beginning to catch up to men when it comes to the amount of accidents they have, including fatal ones. That margin is narrowing. And you have to ask yourself why. Well, one logical conclusion you could come to is that women are driving more than they used to. So logically, the more you drive, the better the chance of an accident. But also, maybe women are becoming a little bit more aggressive when they drive, you know, willing to take a few more risks, you know. As they come up to an intersection and that light turns yellow, maybe they don't put on the brakes so fast. Maybe now they try to rev up the gas and beat that light. So regardless of what it might be, the data does say women are catching up to men as far as accidents. Feminism. Who knew? It turned women into better drivers. Or did it? Hard to say. Are we better drivers because we get in less accidents? Or are we better drivers because we can win the Indy 500? Stuff to think about. However, in conclusion, I want to again turn around this so-called male privilege that was written on the blog and turn it into a female privilege based on the information I've given. Now remember, the male privilege was this: you can be a careless driver and not have people blame it on your sex. That's an incredible privilege that I didn't even know existed, but thank you for that. However, I want to turn it around and put it to this. You can be a careless, unconfident driver and still pay less for auto insurance simply because of your sex. Yes, woman. Yes, women. That is your privilege. Enjoy that privilege while you have it, because it ain't going to last long. But as it goes now, you have that privilege. You can drive like a maniac. And even though people will criticize you as being a poor driver because you're women, you still won't have to pay the same premiums. Now that is a privilege, because you could call me reckless and a risk taker any day. You can call me all the names in the book, but as long as I don't have to pay as much, I'm okay with that. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That was number 3 on the list. Let me know what you think. I'm on my holidays now. I'm in a little bit different of a mood. Farewell. Peace out. See you later.